It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the sun casts a golden hue on everything it touches, and the air is cool but not biting. I had just come home from college for the weekend, excited to enjoy a few days away from the pressure of exams and assignments. Little did I know, the weekend would mark the beginning of a revelation that would shatter the foundation of my life. We were having a normal family dinner. My mom, dad, and little sister sat around the table, and we talked about the usual things, how school was going, work, and upcoming holidays. It felt warm and familiar, the sort of dinner I'd grown up with and cherished. But as we finished eating, my mom's expression changed. She looked at me with a mix of fear and guilt in her eyes, the kind of look that immediately made my heart drop. "I need to tell you something," she said softly, her hands nervously wringing a napkin. My dad looked at her with concern, but there was something in his face too, like he knew what was coming but didn't want to face it. My little sister, too young to understand the weight in the air, kept fiddling with her phone, unaware that our lives were about to change. I felt my throat tighten. "What is it, Mom?" She took a deep breath, as if gathering every ounce of courage she had, and then the words spilled out, words that didn't seem real at first. "Your dad isn't your biological father." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. I blinked, my brain struggling to process what I'd just heard. "What? What do you mean?" My voice came out strained, almost a whisper. My dad's face was stoic, his eyes fixed on the table. He didn't speak, just sat there like a statue. My mom's voice trembled as she continued. "It happened a long time ago, before you were born. I made a mistake. I had an affair." I sat there, numb. "An affair? My mom?" I looked at my dad, expecting anger, expecting something, but all I saw was sadness. He had known. He must have known all this time. "It was a brief thing," my mom said, tears welling up in her eyes. "It didn't mean anything, and I ended it before you were even born." "But, you're not biologically his." I couldn't speak. I didn't know what to say. A million questions flooded my mind. Who was my real father? Did he know about me? Had my dad raised me all these years knowing I wasn't really his? The man I had always seen as my rock, the person I looked up to more than anyone in the world, was he hurting this whole time? "I'm so sorry," my mom sobbed, and I saw her collapse under the weight of her guilt. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought it was better not to say anything, but I can't keep it in anymore." I looked at my dad, trying to find something, anything to say. "Dad." He finally spoke, his voice soft but steady. "I've known since the beginning. But you're my child, and that's all that matters to me." His words were like a bomb, but they couldn't heal the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I was angry, hurt, confused. How could my mom have lied to me my whole life? And my dad, how could he bear the burden of such a truth? Dinner was forgotten, the food cold on our plates. The air was thick with tension, and the house that had always felt like home now seemed foreign, as though I no longer belonged. I excused myself and went to my room, my heart racing, my mind a whirlwind of questions and emotions. I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to wrap my mind around the bombshell that had just been dropped. The man I had called Dad for 21 years wasn't my real father. The woman I thought I knew had kept a life-altering secret from me for my entire life. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to cry, part of me wanted to scream. Another part of me felt a deep, aching sadness for my dad, for the man who had raised me, who had known all along but still loved me unconditionally. He had chosen to be my father, despite everything. As night fell and the house grew quiet, I couldn't sleep. My mind was too full, racing with possibilities and fears. Who was my real father? Would I ever meet him? Did I even want to? I had so many questions, but the one that haunted me the most was this: if my dad wasn't my biological father, then who was I? In the quiet darkness of my room, I realized that the person I thought I was had changed forever. Nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 2: The Search for Answers. The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, a feeling that something essential had shifted in my world. The conversation from the previous night replayed in my mind over and over, a slow, painful loop that left me feeling unmoored. I had always known who I was, or so I thought. But now, my very identity felt like a mystery. I went downstairs, hoping the atmosphere would feel lighter, but it was still thick with unspoken words. My mom and dad were sitting at the kitchen table, quietly sipping their coffee. My dad's eyes met mine, and I could see the tiredness there, the weight of years spent carrying a secret he hadn't chosen. My mom looked fragile, almost like a shadow of herself, racked with guilt. I sat down across from them, my hands shaking as I reached for a piece of toast I wasn't really hungry for. The silence was unbearable. I knew I couldn't hold it in any longer. "I need to know," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "Who is he?" "My biological father." My mom flinched at the question, her eyes filling with fresh tears. My dad's expression didn't change, it was as if he had already accepted whatever was coming. I never thought it would come to this," my mom stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "His name is Mark. He was someone I met through work, back when I was still at the firm. It was a mistake, and I cut all ties with him after I found out I was pregnant." I could feel my pulse quicken. "Does he know? Does he know about me?" She shook her head quickly, as if the idea was too painful to even consider. "No. I never told him. He doesn't know you exist." I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding in my ears. I had lived my whole life without knowing the truth about myself, and now, this man named Mark, someone I'd never met, someone who didn't even know I existed, was my biological father. A stranger, somewhere out there, who had no idea he had a child. "I want to meet him," I said, surprising even myself. The words tumbled out before I could fully process what they meant. But deep down, I knew it was something I needed. There was a part of me that felt incomplete, a part that longed for answers, for some sense of closure. I had to know who he was. What kind of person had unknowingly shaped half of who I was? My mom looked stricken. "I don't know if that's a good idea," she murmured. "I've spent so many years trying to put this behind me, to protect you, to protect our family." "Protect me?" I asked, my voice rising. "You've been lying to me my whole life. How is that protection?" Tears streamed down her face, but I couldn't stop the anger bubbling up inside me. The weight of betrayal sat heavily on my chest. I felt like everything I'd believed in was a lie. And worse, my mother, the person I'd trusted most, had been the one keeping it from me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and sadness. "You could have told me the truth. I had a right to know. I thought I was doing the right thing," my mom sobbed. "I thought it would hurt you less if you never knew. I never wanted you to feel confused about where you belonged." "I feel confused now," I snapped, pushing back from the table. I didn't want to be cruel, but the pain inside me was raw, and I didn't know where to direct it. My dad finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. "Your mom was trying to protect all of us. But you're right, you deserve the truth now. If you want to meet him, we'll support you." His words were like a lifeline in a sea of chaos. Even though he wasn't my biological father, he still spoke as if he were, still stood by me, unwavering in his love. I wanted to hug him, to thank him, but the overwhelming need for answers kept pulling me away. "I need time to think," I muttered before grabbing my coat and heading out the door. I wandered through the neighborhood aimlessly, my mind racing. Mark. My real father's name was Mark. The thought was both strange and intoxicating. I imagined what he might look like. Did I have his eyes? His smile? What kind of person was he? Did he have a family of his own now? Siblings I'd never met? The questions were endless, and they only made the ache in my chest grow stronger. I felt torn between the life I had known and the life that could have been. Would meeting Mark fill the void in my heart, or would it just open up more wounds? As I walked, I realized I had wandered to the park where I used to play as a kid. I sat on one of the old wooden benches, watching children run around, laughing and chasing each other, oblivious to the complexities of life that awaited them. I envied them their simplicity, their innocence. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. I knew I could find Mark if I wanted to. It would take some digging, but in today's world, no one could hide for long. But did I really want to disrupt his life? Did I want to risk opening up old wounds for my family? And what if he didn't want to know me? I stared at my phone for what felt like hours, caught between the need to know and the fear of what I might discover. One tap on the screen could change everything, yet the thought of reaching out terrified me. Would he accept me? Would I accept him? With a deep breath, I closed my eyes, letting the cool breeze wash over me. I didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was certain, my journey to find the truth had only just begun. Chapter 3, Tracing the Past. The following days were a blur of restless nights and anxious thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that my entire life had been a facade, built on secrets I hadn't asked for. My mind kept drifting back to Mark, the man I'd never met, who held half of the answers I so desperately needed. I found myself searching for glimpses of him in the mirror, wondering if the shape of my nose, the way I laughed, or even the way I walked came from him. But every time I thought about finding him, something held me back. It was fear, plain and simple. Fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, fear of unearthing things I wasn't ready to face. And yet, I knew I couldn't live with the uncertainty forever. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was back at my college dorm, staring blankly at a textbook that I wasn't absorbing. My roommate, Jess, was lounging on her bed, completely unaware of the emotional storm brewing inside me. I hadn't told her anything about what was going on. I wasn't ready to share this mess with anyone yet. But I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. "Jess," I said suddenly, my voice cutting through the quiet. She looked up, a little startled. "Yeah. I found out something huge about my family. Like, life-changing." She sat up immediately, her attention fully on me. "What happened?" I hesitated, trying to figure out where to begin. "I found out that my dad isn't my real dad. My mom had an affair before I was born, and the guy she was with, he's my biological father." Jess's eyes widened in shock. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" I nodded, feeling the weight of the words settle in the air between us. "Yeah. I just found out a few days ago. And the worst part is, he doesn't even know I exist." "Oh my God," Jess breathed. I can't even imagine what you're going through. Have you tried to find him?" "Not yet," I admitted. "I don't know if I'm ready. I mean, what if he doesn't want anything to do with me? What if it just makes things worse?" Jess scooted to the edge of her bed, her face soft with concern. "I get why you're scared. But you deserve to know. Even if it's messy, even if it's hard, you deserve answers." I nodded, her words resonating with what I'd been trying to tell myself. "I just don't want to hurt my dad. He's been so supportive, but I know this can't be easy for him." "Yeah, but he loves you," Jess said. "He's always going to be your dad, no matter what. That's not going to change." Her words made me feel a little lighter, like I wasn't navigating this impossible situation alone anymore. Jess was right. My dad had chosen to love and raise me, even with the knowledge of my biological truth. No matter what happened next, he was still my dad. That night, after tossing and turning in bed, I made the decision. I was going to find Mark. It felt like the only way I could move forward, even if it meant stepping into uncharted territory. The next morning, I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. My heart pounded as I typed Mark's last name into the search bar. I didn't have much to go on, just a first name and the fact that he worked in the same industry as my mom, years ago. But after an hour of clicking through old directories, LinkedIn profiles, and Facebook pages, I stumbled across a profile that made my breath catch in my throat. There he was. His face looked older than I had imagined, with some gray streaking through his dark hair, but there was something familiar about him. The same deep-set eyes I saw in my own reflection. The shape of his jawline. It was uncanny. I stared at his profile picture for what felt like an eternity, my stomach in knots. His bio said he lived just a few towns over. He had a job in corporate marketing, was married, and had a daughter. My heart lurched at the thought. I had a half-sister I'd never met. Did she know? Did his wife know about me? Would they even believe me if I showed up out of nowhere? Before I could overthink it any further, I clicked on the message button and began typing. Hi, Mark. I don't know if you'll remember my mom's name, but I recently found out some information that connects us. I believe you might be my biological father. I know this is a lot to take in, and I'm not trying to disrupt your life. I just feel like I need to know the truth. I'd appreciate it if you could reach out whenever you're ready. Thank you. I hit send before I could stop myself, the words flying off into the digital void. It was done. There was no turning back now. For the rest of the day, I was a bundle of nerves, constantly checking my phone for any sign of a response. But nothing came. Hours passed, then days. The silence was unbearable, and each second that ticked by felt like another layer of uncertainty building up in my chest. By the end of the week, I was convinced I had made a mistake. Maybe he had seen my message and decided to ignore it. Maybe he didn't want to open up old wounds or face the reality of a child he hadn't known existed. Part of me wanted to let it go, to retreat back into the safety of my old life, even if it was built on lies. But another part of me refused to give up. And then, one evening, just as I was about to give up hope, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and froze. There, staring back at me, was a message from Mark. I don't know what to say. This is a lot to process. Can we meet in person to talk? My heart raced as I stared at the message, a mix of relief and dread settling over me. I had wanted this, hadn't I? But now that it was happening, I wasn't sure if I was ready. Still, I typed out a response, my hands trembling as I pressed send. Okay. When and where? A few minutes later, he replied, there's a coffee shop in town. Tomorrow afternoon at 3. I agreed, the weight of the encounter looming over me like a cloud. Tomorrow, I would come face to face with the man who was a stranger, yet connected to me in the most intimate way possible. Tomorrow, my search for answers would begin in earnest. But even as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the gnawing question that had haunted me since the moment my mother told me the truth. Was I ready for whatever came next? Chapter 4, The Meeting. The next day arrived with the heaviness of anticipation pressing down on my shoulders. I could hardly focus on anything, my mind racing through a myriad of thoughts. What would I say to Mark? Would I see myself in him? Would he even want to get to know me? Each question felt like a weight, pulling me deeper into a mix of excitement and dread. At noon, I decided to head to the coffee shop early. I needed to settle my nerves before facing the stranger who was also my biological father. The moment I walked in, the familiar aroma of roasted coffee beans and sweet pastries hit me, but it only did so much to calm my anxiety. I ordered a latte and found a small table in the corner, positioning myself so I could see the entrance. As I waited, I replayed the messages we had exchanged. He hadn't given much away in his reply, just a few words that didn't reveal whether he was angry, surprised, or even curious. I sipped my coffee, feeling the heat radiate through the ceramic cup, but it did little to warm the cold pit in my stomach. I glanced at my phone, the minutes stretching on painfully. 3 p.m. came and went, and I began to doubt if he would actually show up. What if he decided it was too much? What if he didn't want to face this? My heart sank at the thought of being rejected again. But just as I was about to convince myself to leave, the door swung open. Mark walked in, and time seemed to slow. He was tall, with a confident stride that immediately caught my attention. I recognized him instantly from the profile picture I had seen online. The years had added some lines to his face, but the resemblance was striking. The way he carried himself, the tilt of his head, even the way he scanned the room, it felt strangely familiar, like I had seen him in my dreams. He caught my eye and paused, his expression shifting from curiosity to confusion as he recognized me. I forced a smile, though my insides were churning. He approached the table, and as he got closer, I noticed the tension in his shoulders. "Hi," I said, my voice slightly shaky. "Thanks for meeting me." "Yeah, of course," he replied, sitting down across from me. His voice was deeper than I expected, and there was an edge of hesitation to it. "This is a lot." "It is," I agreed, my heart racing. I didn't know how else to reach out. We sat in silence for a moment, each of us searching the other's face for something: answers, recognition, perhaps understanding. I could see the gears turning in his mind, just as they were in mine. Finally, he spoke. "So, I guess you want to know about me, and why I never knew you existed?" I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "Yes, but I also want to know about you. What kind of person are you? What's your life like?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. After everything that happened with your mom, I moved on with my life. I got married, and now I have a daughter. I didn't think much about the past, honestly. I had my own family to focus on." My heart twisted at the mention of his daughter. I had a half-sister, someone else who shared blood with me, someone who was living a life I knew nothing about. "Do you ever think about her? About me?" He looked away, his expression clouded. "I didn't know about you until now. I can't say I thought about you specifically, but I always wondered what could have been. I just didn't think I would ever get a chance to find out." His honesty struck a chord. I could see the pain hidden beneath the surface, a longing for clarity that mirrored my own. "I don't blame you," I said softly. "I know my mom made some choices that changed everything." "Yeah," he said, meeting my gaze again. "It's just hard to process. I didn't think I'd be sitting across from you today." The weight of the moment was heavy, and I could feel my pulse quicken. "I wanted to meet you because I feel like I need to understand who I am. For so long, I thought I knew, but now, everything feels different." Mark leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look crossing his face. "I understand. You deserve to know your roots, and I wish I could give you all the answers." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "What do you think will happen next? I don't want to disrupt your life, but I need to know if I'm part of it." He frowned, looking troubled. "That's the thing. I have a family now. A wife and a daughter who don't know about you. This is a lot to take in. I don't want to hurt them." The reality of it hit me like a cold wave. I had to be careful. I had sought out the truth, but the truth was layered and complicated, with implications I hadn't fully considered. I get that. I don't want to come in and upset everything you've built. Mark's gaze softened. It's just, I didn't think I'd ever have to deal with this. I'm still wrapping my head around it. I know it's unexpected, I said, feeling a rush of empathy for him. But I just want to get to know you. To understand where I come from. I don't want to be a burden. He sighed, the tension in his shoulders visibly easing. Let's take it slow, then. I don't want to push you away, but I can't promise anything right now. It's a lot for me to digest, too. Okay, I said, relief flooding through me. I can do that. Just, knowing you're here feels like a step in the right direction. For the next hour, we talked about our lives, sharing stories about childhood, favorite movies, and silly moments that shaped us into who we were. I learned about his work, his family, and the hobbies he enjoyed. With every word exchanged, I felt a strange connection form a bridge between two lives that had been separated by circumstance. But beneath the surface, the reality loomed. I could feel the weight of the unspoken truths hovering over us like a storm cloud. How could we ever move forward without addressing the realities that came with this newfound relationship? As we prepared to leave, Mark hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why now? Why did you decide to reach out? I took a deep breath, weighing my words. I guess I just realized I couldn't live in ignorance anymore. I want to know who I am, and part of that means understanding where I came from. I don't want to live a lie, even if it's uncomfortable. He nodded slowly, as if digesting my words. That makes sense. I want to be open with you about everything. Just know that it might take some time for me to adjust to this. Thank you for being honest, I replied, feeling a weight lift slightly. I appreciate that. As we stepped out of the coffee shop into the cool afternoon air, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, a chance to weave together the pieces of my past and present. Can we keep in touch? I asked, feeling vulnerable but determined. Mark hesitated, then nodded. Definitely. Let's take this one step at a time. As we parted ways, I couldn't help but glance back at him, my heart racing with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. This was just the beginning of a journey I never anticipated, but it felt right. I had taken the first step toward finding my truth, and no matter how rocky the path ahead might be, I knew I wouldn't walk it alone. Chapter 5, Ripples of Change. In the days following my meeting with Mark, a peculiar tension settled into my daily routine. Each morning, I woke up to a familiar swirl of emotions: anticipation, anxiety, and a touch of hope. I found myself frequently checking my phone, half expecting a message from him, though I knew it would take time for us to navigate this new territory. I felt like I was living in a liminal space, straddling the world I knew and the unknown path I was beginning to forge. Classes at college felt oddly trivial compared to the profound changes brewing in my personal life. I sat in lectures, nodding along to discussions about existentialism and ethics, but my mind often wandered to Mark and the implications of our meeting. I had so many questions, and yet I knew it was essential to give him time to process everything. One evening, as I was studying in my dorm, Jess burst in with a lively energy that momentarily distracted me from my swirling thoughts. Hey! Want to go grab some food? I need a break from all this, she said, gesturing at the scattered books and notes on my desk. I hesitated, glancing at my half-finished assignment. I should really get this done. But, maybe I need a break too. We headed out, walking through the bustling campus, which felt alive with the chatter of students and the aroma of food wafting from nearby cafes. As we settled into a small diner, Jess launched into a story about her latest escapade, her laughter infectious. I found myself smiling, grateful for the brief distraction. But the moment she paused, her eyes searching mine, I knew she was about to ask the inevitable question. So, how's it going with your dad, I mean, Mark? The casual mention of his name sent a jolt through me. It's complicated, I admitted, fiddling with my straw. We talked, and it was good. But I can't shake the feeling that there's still so much left unsaid. Have you talked to him since? She pressed, genuine concern etched on her face. I shook my head. Not yet. I think we both need time. I just wish I could fast forward to when everything feels normal. Normal? What's normal about this? She said with a soft laugh. You're in uncharted territory here. Give it time. Relationships like this don't just fall into place. I nodded, knowing she was right, but the waiting was agonizing. I just wish I had a better idea of what to expect. Jess reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. You're brave for doing this. It takes guts to confront your past like that. Just remember, you're not alone. I'm here for you, whatever happens. Her words warmed me, and I felt the tension in my chest ease slightly. After dinner, we wandered the campus under the glow of streetlights, the night air crisp and refreshing. I reveled in the moment, the feeling of normalcy amidst the chaos of my emotions. The next few days passed, and I found myself going through the motions of daily life. I focused on my classes and tried to enjoy time with friends, but the nagging feeling of anticipation never quite faded. Then, one afternoon, as I was scrolling through my phone, I saw an email notification from Mark. My heart raced as I opened it, the words dancing across the screen. Subject, checking in. Hey, your name? Asterisk, I've been thinking about our conversation a lot since we met. It's been overwhelming, and I really appreciate your patience. I'd like to get to know you better. Maybe we can meet again, asterisk. Asterisk, how about next week? I'm free on Tuesday or Thursday afternoon. Let me know what works for you, asterisk. Asterisk best. Mark asterisk. A rush of excitement coursed through me. I could hardly believe it, he wanted to meet again. It felt like a small victory amidst the uncertainty. I quickly typed a response, my fingers flying over the keyboard. Hi Mark. Asterisk, I'd love to meet again. Tuesday works for me. Thank you for reaching out. Looking forward to it, asterisk. Asterisk best. Your name, asterisk. I hit send, my heart pounding with renewed hope. This time, it felt like we would be stepping into deeper territory. I had so many questions prepared, thoughts swirling about my own identity and how he fit into my life. When Tuesday finally rolled around, I felt a mix of nervousness and excitement bubbling within me. I spent the morning preparing mentally, jotting down the questions I wanted to ask. I arrived at the same coffee shop a bit early, trying to calm my racing heart. As I waited, I noticed the people around me, couples chatting, friends laughing, and families enjoying their time together. I wondered how many of them had secrets tucked away, lives intricately woven with stories just like mine. Mark arrived right on time, a warm smile on his face. Hey. Glad to see you again, he said, taking a seat across from me. Thanks for meeting me, I replied, feeling an unfamiliar sense of ease settle over me. I've been thinking about everything since we last spoke, he began, looking thoughtful. I want to be honest about my life, especially since you're a part of it now. The sincerity in his voice was palpable, and I felt a flicker of hope. I'd like that. I have a lot of questions. Go for it, he encouraged, leaning forward. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. First, can you tell me about your life after everything happened? How did you move on? Mark nodded, and I could see the memories flood back to him. It wasn't easy. I was young, and I had to figure things out quickly. After your mom, I focused on my career and eventually met my wife. We built a life together, and then we had our daughter. I never imagined this would come back into my life. And how do you feel about it? I asked, my heart racing. About me being here now. He paused, choosing his words carefully. It's a lot to take in. Part of me is excited, but another part is terrified. I don't want to hurt my family, and I don't want to disrupt what we have. But I can't deny the connection we share. My heart ached with empathy. I understand. I'm trying to figure out how to fit into your life, too. Mark nodded, his expression softening. I think the best way is to take it slow. Get to know each other and see where this goes. It's been years since I've had to think about my past, and I don't want to rush this. Agreed, I said, relief flooding through me. I don't want to rush either. Just knowing you want to explore this gives me hope. As we continued to talk, I learned more about his family life, his career, and the things he loved: hiking, cooking, and the joy of watching his daughter grow up. I shared my own stories, finding comfort in our exchange, realizing that despite the circumstances, we could find common ground. The more we talked, the more I felt the barriers between us begin to dissolve. I began to see Mark not just as a stranger or a biological father, but as a person with his own hopes, fears, and dreams. It was both comforting and disconcerting, but I felt a sense of belonging start to take root. As our conversation wound down, I knew I had more questions than answers, but I also felt something shift within me, a sense of peace in the chaos. Can we keep doing this? I asked as we stood to leave, my heart full of hope. I want to continue getting to know you, to understand who I am and where I come from. Absolutely, he replied, a warm smile lighting up his face. I'd like that very much. As we parted ways, I walked back to my dorm feeling lighter. Each step felt like a step toward reclaiming my identity, a journey I was no longer embarking on alone. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time since I uncovered the truth, I felt like I was moving in the right direction toward understanding, connection, and the possibility of something beautiful. Chapter 6, New Discoveries. The days that followed my second meeting with Mark felt different. I found myself replaying our conversations in my mind, savoring the details and the new dynamics we were creating. Each text exchange brought a thrill, a connection that was slowly deepening. I couldn't help but feel that we were weaving a new tapestry, one with threads of shared history and discovery. The week seemed to fly by, and before I knew it, it was time for our next meeting. We had agreed to meet at a local park, a more casual setting where we could walk and talk. As I made my way there, I couldn't shake the mixture of excitement and nerves bubbling inside me. What more would we learn about each other today? When I arrived, the park was alive with the vibrant colors of autumn. Leaves danced in the gentle breeze, swirling around the paths like confetti. I spotted Mark sitting on a bench, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup, a contented smile on his face as he watched the world go by. The sight of him made my heart race. It was surreal to see someone who shared my blood, yet we were still strangers in many ways. "Hey!" I called out, waving as I approached. "Hi there," he replied, standing up to greet me. "Perfect day for a walk, isn't it?" "It really is," I said, feeling a sense of warmth envelop me. We started walking along the winding path, the crunch of leaves beneath our feet creating a comforting rhythm. The conversation flowed easily between us, shifting from light-hearted topics like favorite books and movies to deeper discussions about our hopes and fears. "I've been thinking a lot about family lately," Mark said, his tone reflective. "Not just my immediate family but what family means in a broader sense. It's complicated, especially now." "Yeah, it is," I agreed, glancing at him. "I've always defined family as the people who love and support you. But learning about you has made me question that definition." He nodded, his expression serious. "I feel the same. Family can be biological, but it can also be chosen. I just hope I can navigate this without hurting anyone involved. The honesty between us was palpable, and I felt a surge of understanding. I know this is hard for you. I want to make sure you feel comfortable with this too. I don't want to disrupt your life. Mark stopped walking and turned to face me, his eyes intense. You're not disrupting anything. This is a part of my life now, and I'm glad you're in it. But we need to be cautious, especially since I have a daughter who knows nothing about you. I felt a pang of sympathy at the thought of his daughter, a little girl who was completely unaware of the complexities swirling around her family. How old is she? 4, he said, a smile breaking through his seriousness. She's full of energy and curiosity. It's one of the best things about being a dad. Watching her discover the world is magical. The way his face lit up at the mention of his daughter warmed my heart. What's her name? Lila, he replied, a hint of pride in his voice. She loves to draw and tell stories. Sometimes I think she's got more creativity in her little finger than I have in my entire body. Sounds like she's going to be a little artist. I laughed. Maybe she'll be the one to paint the family portrait. Mark chuckled, and I could see the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. I hope so. I want her to grow up knowing she can express herself however she wants. As we continued walking, we exchanged stories about our childhoods. Mark shared memories of family vacations and the challenges he faced growing up, while I talked about my experiences with friends and my journey through school. With every revelation, I felt like we were peeling back layers, uncovering not just who we were but also what shaped us into the people we had become. After an hour, we found a quiet spot near a small pond, where the water reflected the golden hues of the setting sun. It was the perfect place to pause and soak in the beauty of the moment. Mark sat down on a bench, and I followed suit. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Of course," I replied, intrigued. "Have you talked to your mom since everything came out?" I hesitated, the question tugging at a raw nerve. "Not since the day I confronted her. It's been hard to look at her without feeling betrayed. I just don't understand how she could keep this from me for so long." Mark nodded, empathy evident in his expression. "That's understandable. It's a huge thing to process. But maybe there's more to her story than you know." "What do you mean?" I asked, curious. "Well, I don't know your mom well, but sometimes people make decisions based on fear or their own experiences. Maybe she thought she was protecting you by keeping this from you," he suggested gently. I sighed, feeling the weight of his words. I just wish she had trusted me enough to share the truth. "I get that," Mark said, his voice steady. "But remember, she's human too. She might have her own regrets about how everything unfolded." We sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the complexities of family and trust. I appreciated Mark's perspective. It was a reminder that while I was navigating my own emotions, there were layers of his experiences to consider too. After a moment, I decided to share more about my feelings. "I want to confront her, but I'm scared. What if it changes everything? What if I can't go back to how things were?" "Sometimes change is necessary," he replied, his gaze steady. "But you have to be ready for it. Confronting her might be painful, but it could also be liberating. You deserve to know the truth, and you deserve to express how you feel." His encouragement resonated within me, igniting a small flame of determination. "You're right. I can't keep avoiding this. I need to face her, even if it's hard. Just remember to approach it with an open mind. It might not go how you expect, but you'll learn something valuable either way." With that, we shifted back to lighter topics, laughing and joking as we strolled through the park, but the weight of our conversation lingered in the background. I realized that I was beginning to see Mark not just as a stranger but as a potential ally in navigating my newfound reality. As we parted ways, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I knew I would need to have that conversation with my mom soon. But for the first time, I didn't feel entirely alone in this journey. Mark's presence provided a sense of grounding, a reminder that even in the midst of uncertainty, connections could be formed, and new paths could be forged. With the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I left the park feeling lighter, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. I had taken another step toward understanding my identity, and with each step, I felt a little closer to the truth. Chapter 7, The Confrontation. As the days slipped by, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of anticipation and anxiety. I couldn't shake the conversations I'd had with Mark, and his words echoed in my mind. I knew I had to confront my mom about everything, but the prospect terrified me. What if I didn't get the answers I was looking for? What if the conversation turned confrontational? I decided to plan it carefully. I needed the right moment, a time when we could sit down without distractions. I waited for a quiet evening when my mom wasn't preoccupied with work or household chores. After dinner one night, I summoned the courage to approach her. "Mom, can we talk for a minute?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked up from her phone, a hint of concern crossing her face. "Of course. Is everything okay?" I hesitated, the weight of my emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "I need to talk about Dad. About Mark." Her expression shifted instantly, and I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Okay. Let's sit down." We moved to the living room, where the soft glow of the lamp cast a warm light over us. I sat across from her, trying to gauge her expression, but it was difficult to read. "Just so you know, this isn't easy for me either," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "I feel like we've been living in a fog, and I need to clear it up." She nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and understanding. "I know. I'm sorry for how everything unfolded. It was never my intention to keep secrets from you." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why did it take finding out from someone else?" Her gaze dropped to her hands, and for a moment, silence filled the room. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought it would protect you. It was a difficult choice, and I was afraid of how you would react." "Protect me?" I echoed, frustration creeping into my voice. "You didn't give me the chance to process it myself. I feel betrayed." "I understand, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she replied, her voice cracking. "But please believe me when I say that I thought I was doing what was best for you. Your biological father, was a complicated man, and I wanted to shield you from that reality." I felt the sting of her words, the weight of her confession pressing down on me. "But don't you think I deserve to know who I really am? I've spent my whole life believing one thing, and suddenly, it's all different." She looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're still the same person, your name. Nothing can change that. Just because Mark is your biological father doesn't change the love I have for you or the life we built together." "But it changes everything," I argued, my voice rising. "This isn't just about biology, it's about trust. How can I trust you again after this?" The silence that followed felt suffocating. I could see the weight of my words settling heavily between us. "I wish I could take it back. I wish I could go back to when everything was simple," she said softly. "But we can't," I replied, my heart aching. "All I want is honesty moving forward. I need to know who I am and where I come from." My mom nodded, her expression somber. "I promise to be honest with you from now on. I'll tell you everything I know about your father, and about my choices. But I also need you to understand that it was never just about him, it was about protecting you from a painful truth." I took a moment to absorb her words, grappling with the complexity of the situation. "I want to know about Mark. I want to understand how he fits into my life now. She took a deep breath, visibly gathering her thoughts. Mark, he was a part of my life long before I met your father. Our relationship was complicated, filled with both love and heartbreak. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. Your father offered me stability, and I thought that was what was best for you. Her honesty struck a chord within me, stirring up feelings I had buried deep. Did you love him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark? Yes, I did. But love doesn't always mean being together, and I believed I had to make the choice that would give you the best life, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't think you would want anything to do with him after everything that happened. The pain in her voice cut through my anger, and for a moment, I felt sympathy for her struggle. I don't know what I want right now. I'm still processing everything. But I want to explore this relationship with Mark. He wants to be part of my life. My mom's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and apprehension crossing her features. Are you sure that's what you want? It could bring up a lot of emotions for everyone involved. I don't know, but I have to try. I can't pretend that I don't want to know him, and I can't ignore this part of my identity anymore, I admitted, my heart racing. She nodded, a mixture of pride and concern in her eyes. I can't stop you from pursuing that. But I need you to promise me something. What's that? I asked, curious. Promise me you'll keep the lines of communication open. I want to be a part of this process, even if it's difficult for me, she said, her voice steady. I promise, I replied, feeling the weight of her words. As the conversation drew to a close, I felt a strange mixture of relief and lingering tension. We had made progress, but I knew this journey was far from over. There were still many layers to peel back, and while I felt a sense of resolution, there was also a heaviness that lingered in the air. After our talk, I left the living room, feeling a mix of exhaustion and clarity. The confrontation had been hard, but it was a necessary step in reclaiming my narrative. I knew that my relationship with my mom would take time to heal, and that my connection with Mark would be a journey of its own. In the days that followed, I leaned into my conversations with Mark, texting him updates about my life and sharing my thoughts about our future meetings. He responded enthusiastically, sharing his own anecdotes and expressing his excitement about getting to know me better. One night, as I was laying in bed scrolling through my messages, I found myself feeling hopeful about what lay ahead. The uncertainty was still there, but it felt more manageable now. I had taken the first step toward understanding my past and forging my own path, and I was determined to keep moving forward. When our next meeting arrived, we decided to explore a local art gallery. It felt fitting, given our previous conversations about creativity and self-expression. As we walked through the vibrant exhibits, I felt a sense of ease wash over me. Mark had a way of making everything feel less intimidating, and I was grateful for the connection we were building. This piece really speaks to me, Mark said, stopping in front of a large abstract painting filled with swirling colors. It reminds me of the chaos we sometimes feel in our lives, don't you think? I studied the painting, appreciating the emotions it evoked. Yeah, it feels alive, like there's so much going on beneath the surface. Exactly, he replied, a spark of excitement in his eyes. Art has a way of expressing what words sometimes can't. As we continued exploring the gallery, I began to realize that each painting, each sculpture, told a story of its own. Just like our lives, they were layered and complex, filled with beauty and pain. I felt a growing sense of connection to Mark as we shared our thoughts on each piece, finding common ground in our perspectives. Later, as we settled down in a small cafe within the gallery, I took a moment to absorb everything around us. The atmosphere was buzzing with creativity and inspiration, and I felt a sense of possibility brewing between us. Do you ever think about how much we're both learning right now? I asked, stirring my coffee. He looked thoughtful for a moment. Yeah, it's like we're unraveling a mystery together. Every conversation, every piece of art we see, it all adds a new layer to our understanding. I never thought I'd be in a position to explore this part of my life, I admitted, feeling a sense of vulnerability wash over me. But being here with you makes me feel like I'm on the right path. Mark smiled, his eyes warm. You are. I'm grateful for the chance to get to know you, and I'm excited about where this journey will take us. We spent the rest of the afternoon sharing our dreams, fears, and aspirations, realizing how much we had in common despite our different life experiences. I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't expected, and for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where Mark was a part of my life. As we walked back to our cars, the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The beauty of the moment enveloped me, and I felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this tangled web of family connections would lead to something beautiful. I realized that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but as long as I had the courage to face them, I could navigate the complexities of my newfound reality. Chapter 8, Building Bridges. The weeks rolled on, each day bringing new conversations with Mark and deeper reflections on my past. Our relationship was blossoming, and I found myself looking forward to our meetups with an excitement I hadn't anticipated. It felt as if I were not just connecting with my biological father but also forging a friendship built on mutual understanding and respect. One crisp Saturday morning, we planned to meet at a nearby farmer's market. I loved the atmosphere, the vibrant stalls, the scent of fresh produce, and the laughter of families enjoying their weekend. It felt like the perfect setting for a relaxed day of conversation. As I arrived, I spotted Mark at a fruit stand, examining a basket of apples. He looked up and waved, a bright smile lighting up his face. Hey! You made it? Of course. I wouldn't miss this, I replied, joining him at the stand. What do you think? Should we try these? Absolutely, he said, picking up a shiny red apple. These look delicious. After selecting a few fruits, we wandered through the market, sampling local cheeses and pastries while chatting about everything under the sun. I was pleasantly surprised by how easy it felt to be around him. There were moments when I could see glimpses of myself in his mannerisms, little quirks and habits that mirrored my own, which felt oddly comforting. As we moved from stall to stall, I noticed Mark's interaction with the vendors. He was warm and engaging, his genuine interest in the people around him radiating a kindness that drew others in. Watching him reminded me that this was the father I had longed for, someone who embodied compassion and authenticity. Do you come here often? I asked as we stopped by a stall selling homemade jams. Yeah, I try to come by every couple of weeks. It's a nice way to support local businesses and grab some fresh produce. Plus, they have the best peach jam, he replied, his eyes lighting up. Peach jam? That sounds amazing. Let's grab a jar, I said, and we made our way over. As we browsed through the colorful array of jars, a woman approached us, her face bright with recognition. Mark. It's so good to see you. How's Lila? Mark smiled warmly, his demeanor instantly shifting to a proud father. She's doing great. She just started preschool, and she loves it. How about you? The two exchanged pleasantries while I stood to the side, observing their easy rapport. It was heartwarming to see Mark so at ease, and it made me curious about his life as a father. After they finished chatting, Mark turned to me, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. Sorry about that. I used to come here with Lila a lot before things got busy. She loves the animals at the petting zoo nearby. Sounds like a blast. I'd love to meet her someday, I said, and the thought filled me with both excitement and trepidation. Mark's smile widened. I'd like that too. Just remember, it'll be a big adjustment for her to understand this new relationship. I want to be sensitive to that. Of course, I agreed, already thinking about how I could approach meeting his daughter in a way that felt natural. I want her to feel comfortable with me. I know it's a lot for everyone. After finishing at the market, we decided to take a walk along a nearby trail that wound through a park. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the path. The atmosphere felt serene, allowing us to dive deeper into conversation. I've been thinking a lot about my mom lately, I confessed, breaking the comfortable silence. About our conversation the other night. It's still hard to process everything. Mark nodded, his expression encouraging. It's understandable. It's a lot to unpack. Have you had a chance to talk to her again? Just a bit. We're still navigating the aftermath of our talk. I want to give her space but also make sure we're communicating. I sighed, the weight of it all pressing down on me. I'm torn between wanting to understand her choices and feeling hurt by the secrecy. That's natural, Mark said thoughtfully. Remember, healing takes time. Just because you're related doesn't mean you'll see eye to eye right away. But the fact that you're willing to have those conversations shows strength. Thanks. I just hope I can find a way to rebuild that trust, I replied, glancing at him. It feels daunting. It can be, but you're not alone in this. Just take it one step at a time, he encouraged. And I'm here for you. We're in this together, right? Definitely, I said, feeling a wave of gratitude for his support. We continued walking, and I could feel the bond between us growing. It was as if we were slowly building a bridge across the years of separation. I realized how much I appreciated Mark's perspective, his understanding of the complexities of family and identity. As we reached a clearing overlooking a small lake, we paused to take in the view. The water shimmered in the afternoon sun, reflecting the sky in a way that felt almost magical. Sometimes, I think about what could have been, Mark said, breaking the peaceful silence. If circumstances had been different, maybe we would have built a relationship sooner. I think about that too, I admitted, my heart heavy with the thought. But I also believe we can create something meaningful now. It's not too late.